Hello everybody, welcome to Chin Fat. In this video I'm going to be showing how to do a crowd replication inside of After Effects. Crowd replications are used all the time on movies when they will bring in maybe like 30-40 extras and they'll put them in front of a green screen and be able to duplicate those extras so it looks like a big crowd was available to shoot a shot. And what they'll usually do is they'll bring in the extras and they'll have them change clothes, jackets, hats, things like that, so you kind of can't really pick out the duplicated extras in the crowd. And it usually sells pretty well. In this we did a quick demo, so we're using people here that are going to be basically in the same clothing. We rearrange them and have them do it a couple times. So the movement's not matched and duplicated throughout the crowd all that much, but you will see the duplicates of very obvious things like red hats and also things like this shirt that just kind of stand out quite a bit. But this is just teaching the concept. We did not get like 30 or 40 extras in all those different costumes. We were just doing this with a handful of students at a film school, so to basically just demonstrate how this is done. Now, one thing we did is we shot a couple different pieces of footage here. We put a camera on a jib. We placed a whole bunch of items in the shot. The issue with this shot is when they did the footage, they were only supposed to raise the camera on the jib about 6 feet, but they ended up going about like 20 feet up in the air, which can kind of ruin the effect because when the camera goes putting them into a 3D space, they start to look like cardboard cutouts if the shot is too extreme. And we placed a whole bunch of items in here to use to make the 3D camera track a little more accurate. But what I've done here is I've just with my phone, I walked outside and did a quick shot of just a pedestal here with the camera raising up that I'm going to stabilize just in my hand. And it actually stabilizes pretty well to kind of show what the real effect should look like. And here's an instance of what this ends up looking like with the crowds that we shot here. And as I mentioned, as you start getting up too high, the shot gets up too high, you can start seeing like right here, these guys start looking like 2D cardboard cutouts if the shot's too extreme. So just like a quick little shot from there to there would have been a little bit better to reveal the crowd in the background. So just a little bit of a pedestal from maybe down here, low angle, to about right there would have been enough to kind of reveal the crowd in the background and sell the effect. But like I said, as you go too high, people start looking like cardboard cutouts. So that's why I'm going to be using my cell phone video here to stabilize and show the effect. So the other thing that we shot here is we put people in front of a green screen. This color calibration's off. It's on a red camera and it's raw footage, so I can change the color temperature to match more what we're doing here, which is fine. But we have our 12 by green screen, and we do this outside instead of doing it in a studio. There's a recommendation. So you can do it under similar lighting. So when you do your jib shot, it's under similar lighting as what's on the green screen here. So we did it the same angle, so you have so we matched the lighting. Especially, this was a nice cloudy diffused day, as it was with my cell phone here. So the lighting's going to match pretty well. But if it's on a nice bright sunny day, if you have the sun like in a certain position when you're outside and then you go inside the studio, it's going to be tough to match things like color temperature and shadows, quality, and directionality as well. So just if you have a portable green screen to take outside, it works quite a bit better outside. And another thing we did is we just built this cheap little, painted this kind of cardboard cutouts to put on the ground, but it actually ended up keying pretty well. If you have something like a cyc to bring outside where it's a cyclorama and it has a curve that they can stand on, it's more consistently colored, the easier it will be to key. So what I'm going to do is I've got my shot here. I've got the length of my shot here. Like I said, we're going to stabilize this. And maybe we've got like a 3 or 4 foot elevation here, pedestal shot. So I'm going to start grabbing shots of my actors and matching them up with the length of my shot down here. So what I'm going to do is we had the crowd cheer for about like almost like 60 seconds each time, and then we did it twice for each crowd. We had 3 different crowds come in that will allow us to not basically duplicate movement in the shot, so it doesn't look like everybody's moving in sync. That way it will look more random. So I'm going to grab a couple of crowd shots here, put an in point, and I'm just going to grab the video here and drag it and drop it down. That's going to be a little too long, which is fine. And now I'm going to go down to my next shot and grab a shot from this crowd and do the same thing. And I'm going to keep doing this until I have a whole bunch of different layers. I'll keep doing this. I'm going to keep changing my in and out points so I have different takes of different movement so they don't sync up, and then I'll come back and show you what I've got. All right, I've got all my shots laid down in here. I've got my my plate shot at the bottom with the phone, and then all the static shots of everybody cheering in front of the green screen. And I want these all to match the length of my phone shot. Some of these I just put random out points here. So I'm going to arrow down and jump to the end here and do a Control-Shift-K or a Command-Shift-K on a Mac, and it cuts through all these here. And I'm going to select all that garbage and delete it. And now I'm left with everything being the same length. and I've got basically 8 layers of cheering up here on my 1 layer of phone. So I'm going to select all this here, and I'm going to right click and say replace with After Effects composition. And inside of After Effects, it has brought in all my layers just like you see them inside of Premiere with the exact same length. And okay, and here we go. So I'm gonna, first of all, I'm gonna select all these items here, and I'm gonna turn them off. Hit the eyeball and turn them off. Because this is what shot I'm gonna deal with. Even if you do a pedestal shot, you might wanna do a little bit of stabilization just to make it smooth. So right now, I'm going to right click on my phone pedestal. I'm going to say Warp Stabilizer VFX, and it's gonna start analyzing this and stabilize the shot. And I want this, since it's on a cell phone, I want probably subspace warp turned on because it has a little bit of kind of a jello effect from the chroma sensors that are inside of cell phones. If you're on a regular jib and you're not getting kind of that like kind of jello effect with a nice camera, you might want to just go to either position or position scale rotation. If it's on a jib, you're probably going to go to just position here and do smooth motion, and then once again position. But since I'm on my cell phone, I'm doing subspace warp. On that other shot you saw with the actual jib, we did do a bit of stabilization on it, and we chose position, and it did a pretty good job of stabilizing. So I'm going to let that finish, and then we'll come back and take a look at it. All right, now that that's done, let's take a look at the shot really quick. I'm going to put this on auto here, so it kind of auto scales for the resolution that it needs to process. Press play and take a look, and it did a really good job stabilizing that shot. Looks really good. And now that I have an effect on the shot, what I want to do is I want to right click on it, and I want to pre-compose it, put it into another composition so it treats this, all the effects and everything, as if it's kind of a standalone clip with it already stabilized. So I'm going to go pre-compose. I'm going to move all my attributes into that composition, and I'm going to rename this. I call it my final phone plate here. Hit OK, and it puts it inside of a composition. So now it's going to treat it like it's its own video clip. So, because if you're trying to do things like a camera track on this, those effects will mess with your shot. So that's what I'm going to do next here. After I've done that, I'm going to right click on this, and I'm going to say track camera. I'm basically going to convert this shot. We're going to create a 3D camera based on the movement of this shot here. Because this is a 2D image, so I'm going to make a 3D camera space by right-clicking on it and saying track camera. Now we'll track this and analyze it, and it will create a 3D camera space based on the movement here. So I'm going to let that finish, and we'll come back and take a look at what we got next. Okay, now that 3D camera tracker is done, I'm going to go up to my effect controls, make sure this is selected. It should be selected automatically. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move out here, and you're going to see, let me increase the size here, this track point size, and show you what we've got. These are a whole bunch of tracking points that it's created. It detects different types of angles of planes inside of this space here. And it needs at least 3 of these tracked pixels to create the dimensions of X, Y, Z, basically the X-axis, Y-axis, Z-axis, so you can tell if this is sitting down flat. And this target looks like it is sitting down flat on the ground here. So this is a good tracking point right here. That looks like that plane is about accurate there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold my target there, hold my mouse there, and right-click on it and say create a solid and camera. So it creates a camera here for it to work in our 3D camera tracker space. Now we've got a 3D space here, and it's put a 3D solid in this tracked camera space. If we zoom up to this here, what we've got is we've got our Z-axis, which is now pointing up and down. So this, if I move this right here, it's moving that shape, that's actually below the ground now. And if I move it up, it's above the ground. So I'm going to use this object here to replace with my video clip of the crowd. And if I play through this here, you'll notice that thing stays flat on the ground, locked right to the ground where it's supposed to be. So now it's created a 3D camera space, and you can put objects in here that are going to move with that 3D camera track. So, but we got to get this kind of straightened out here, because I'm going to replace this shape layer here with the crowd. So right now I've got my, if we zoom up to this, I'm going to hold down Option and zoom up. My Y-axis is kind of pointed out toward this direction, so I'm going to go under this data. I'm going to go under the transform here under the track solid, and I'm going to rotate this so it's kind of angled properly. I'm going to rotate this around my Z-axis here. This Z-axis point and kind of change that angle. So I'm going to rotate this kind of that way because I want the crowd kind of facing out that direction. Right now, if I bring them in here, they're going to be laying down flat. And I want to stand them up, because right now, like I said, if we replace them on this layer, they're going to be laying down flat on the ground. And let me show you what I'm talking about. So with this laying down flat, I'm going to replace this with some of my green screen footage here, just to show you what's happening with this kind of angle that it's looking here. I'm going to select my track solid. This is important. It has to be selected. Now you go up and grab the footage that you want to replace it with, and I'm going to drag it down. And while I'm dragging, I'm going to hold down Option. I have not let go of my mouse yet. I'm going to hold down Option or Alt, and I'm going to move it over to my track solid And do not let go of Alt or Option and let go of your mouse. Let go, and it replaces that. Notice how these guys are now are laying down flat. This 2D layer is laying down flat. It tracks, but they're laying down flat on the ground. So we want to change the angle. I'm going to undo that and go back to my solid. And I'm going to arrow this down and going to go to transform, and we're going to stand this up 90 degrees. That's going to be around the x-axis right here. This is the x-axis, and we want to rotate that so it's standing up. So I'm going to select this and do it 90 degrees so it's standing up perfectly. There we go. Now we notice this is kind of facing to the right here. We want to kind of face this more toward the camera. So that's going to be a rotation around the y-axis. So I'm just going to grab this and drag it so it looks like that arrow is kind of pointing toward the camera. And there we go. Okay, so now we've got these layers down here that are timed out that have the in and out point. What we're going to do is I'm going to grab one of these. I'm going to turn it on. Shift question mark to go kind of full frame here. And then this is now composited on top. I'm going to right click on this one. And I'm going to say pre-compose. I'm going to do this to all of them, actually. I'm going to pre-compose this into its own composition. I'm going to call this crowd 1. And the reason why I do that is because all the effects that we're going to be doing on the shot with the green screen and the matting is going to basically be in its own layer to act like it's its own video clip. So I'm going to move all the layers into the new composition, hit OK, and it puts it up here. So now I've got it up here. It's right here, but it's also put it up here. And now it's going to treat this like it's its own clip. So now I can actually delete this out of my timeline. And I'm going to do that to each one of those here. So let's do that. Let's do that to each one, and then I'll come back and we'll get moving. So I'm going to do that to each one of these here and put each one of these layers in its own comp, and then we'll come back and take a look. Okay, now that I've done that, I can get rid of these ones in my timeline because it's put a copy up here. It's put a composition up here of each one and delete those. And now all I'm left with is my final foam plate, my track solid that I've pointed toward the camera. And what we're going to do is grab one of these crowd shots. So now we're going to select our track solid. This is selected. Grab the item we want to replace it with. Now as I move it, hold down Option or Alt. Hover it over this. Let go of my left mouse key, but don't let go of your Option key. Let go. It's replaced it. Now I can let go of my Option key. And there we've got our crowd replaced, and now they're standing up and looking at us. Let's zoom up to this. We've got some color issues and stuff we're going to fix here in a little bit, but let's fix some minor issues here first. First of all, right now, the anchor point is right in the middle, which means the ground level is basically right here. We rotated our feet are under the ground. It's just composited on top, so you can't really see that. So what we need to do is get the anchor point at their toe, so their toe is standing on this level on the ground. So what we're going to do is go down to our little composition here, go down to transform, and turn off the audio, no audio, and I'm going to grab my anchor point based on the y-axis here, and I'm going to elevate it until it matches the toe here. So I'm going to grab the second right here, which is the doing it on the y-axis, and drag that up so it meets the toe. And now they're elevated, so their feet are touching the ground at this point. So now as we play, you'll see that these guys lock to the ground and they move. They're way too small right now. Their proportions are out of size unless this is a giant world and these are miniature people, which they're not. So we're going to go to scale and we're going to increase their scale so they look about like the right height for the distance from the camera. So now the next thing that we need to do is work on the key. I've got some different tutorials on how to green screen specifically. I'm not going to get too detailed into it. I'm going to kind of go through this pretty quickly. Just so we can kind of get through the concept of this crowd replication. So I'm going to double click on my pre-comp. It's going to open up the original layer of my green screen here. One thing I need to do, this is red footage, and I'm going to fix the color temperature. So I'm going to select all of my clips here. So I'm going to right click on this one and say reveal layer source and project. This is it right there. I'm going to right click on it and go to interpret footage and main. And then I'm going to go to more options. This is only for raw footage here. And I'm going to go in and change my color temperature to 5600. Change my tint to 0. And my ISO, I'm going to crank up my ISO to 1000 there and get a little bit more exposure. I'm going to hit OK. Hit OK again. And now the color temperature looks a little more accurate. I'm going to right click on it and say interpret footage and remember that interpretation. I'm going to select the rest of these here. Right click, interpret footage, and say apply that interpretation to these other clips, and so that all those red footage clips will match that color temperature. Now that I'm done there, let's start pulling a key on this. Okay, with that interpretation done, I'm going to go, and actually it probably needs to be brightened up a little bit more, so I'm just going to grab, you can do this either in the raw settings, but if you're doing it on a regular clip, let's show how to do it under Lumetri. I typed in Lumetri under effects and presets, drag it onto the clip, and we're going to do some little adjustments. I'm going to boost the exposure a little bit, Maybe boost the saturation a little bit so it'll key the green a little bit better. And right about there. Okay, now that that's done, we're going to go over to our effects, and I'm going to type in key, and I'll bring up the key light little package here with the 3 filters combined under the key light suppressor item here. I'm going to drag this over and drop it on, and that drops a key light, key cleaner, and advanced spill suppressor on this, so we can use all these tools to do a chroma key on this. Now I'm going to create a garbage matte on this. I'm going to select it. I'm going to go up to my pen tool, and we're going to click. I'm going to try to keep this to the edge so the hands don't go out. The feet don't move on these. They keep their feet in place, but their hands are kind of waving around, so I can kind of do a little mask like this, and then leave some room for their hands to flail about and create a garbage matte, and there we go. And now I'm going to start pulling a key. I'm going to go on my key color here, click here, and do an initial key. Let's go to our alpha channel here and look at it and clean this up. And I middle click to kind of drag and look at this matte here. And all the white is what's going to be left in. This guy was wearing a green hat, so that's going to be kind of impossible to take out unless we do a little... so just if you're doing this, make sure that nobody's wearing green in front of the green screen, so it's easy to pull a key. This thing's going to be kind of impossible because it almost matches a green screen. So I'm going to go to green gain, and I'm going to move this around, increase the green gain on that a little bit, and it actually got rid of some of the darks there. That looks good. Maybe 106 just to make it nice and clean. You don't want to be too aggressive on these things. I'm going to go to screen balance and see if we can bring back some of the whites. And same thing, you don't want to really go past maybe 40 on this. It's going to give you enough. Now we can kind of, and it's still a little noisy in the whites, but we can go and fix this in our screen matte. I'm going to change my screen pre-blur. It's going to blur the screen a little bit, which will soften up the edges. Going to do maybe about 3 pixels on that, hit enter, and it will just, and that there, now kind of cleaned up the whites a little bit. Go to screen matte, and we're going to go to clip white, take that down to 90, and we're going to soften the edges by about maybe 3 pixels and just kind of get this. And it still needs a little bit of cleanup work here and there, but I'm going to work on that, then we'll come back and look at my final key. All right, and a couple of things we want to do here is probably make sure our advanced spill suppressor is checkmarked to kind of kill the green color that we've keyed out there around the edges. If we go to my little, I'll pull down here and tell it to show RGB or the main composite. We're getting a pretty decent key there. I could still work on it a little bit, but that's kind of covers the point there. And now we've got this crowd sitting out there, and as we play, they match the camera move there. And now the scale is kind of looking off to me. It looks like they're probably too short. So I'm going to go under scale, hit S for scale, and we're going to increase the scale. Right now there's kind of a mismatch between contrast and whatnot with the background and the video shot here. So we'll try to match that a little bit. Now as that elevates and match the move, and we're going to also do some other things like create shadows and a bunch of other different things. There we go. They look good lock into the ground there. So I'm going to grab this crowd and I'm going to duplicate this crowd, and I'm going to move over here and I'm going to grab my Z axis. I'm going to slightly push them a little further back. Let me zoom up to this and take a look at it. I'm going to grab my Z axis and kind of move them a little further back. Now you can see that there's a layer slightly behind this layer. I'm going to grab my X axis and scoot them over to the left a little bit. Now I've got a different crowd there, but this is the exact same crowd and do the exact same thing. So what I can do is go up to my project, grab crowd 2, do the same thing that we did with our shape layer. Have this selected, grab crowd 2, start dragging it. Now hold down option while you're dragging, let go of your left mouse key, then let go of the option key. And we've got a different group now that's behind this other group. I can grab my X axis and scoot them over. And by the way, if you hold down shift, it will do it. Right now it's doing it slow. If you hold down shift, it will do it a lot faster. There we go, move them right there. Now in crowd 2, I'm going to have to create a garbage mask, a unique garbage mask for these guys. So I'm going to double click on it, go to the layer level, and we're going to create a mask for these guys. And this guy's kind of tall, so I'm going to start up here. He's got his arms up there, but kind of get it close to the feet here because they don't move the feet. Minimize the amount of keying that has to happen down here, especially on that crummy green screen down there. There we go. Now that I've done a garbage mask, and go to crowd 1, borrow these filters. If the lighting's the same and everything, the keying's going to be about the same. I'm going to grab all these filters here, Control C to copy, go to crowd 2, Control C to paste, and boom, we've got a key on crowd 2. Go back to my final comp here, and we've got our separate group right there. And now as we play, we've got 2 sets of people there. In fact, if I want to mess with my contrast to kind of get this to match here, these guys will look a little cooler temperature than the background here because this is mismatched footage. So I'm going to go into Lumetri, put that on my bottom layer. Let's add a little bit of contrast to this to make it a little more contrasty. And we're going to change the temperature here, see if we can kind of cool it off just a little bit. Can match lighting. And this kind of shows why it would be important to use the exact same camera and use the exact same lighting. These were done on different days, so it'd just take a little bit of matching there. Or even could take the crowds and warm them up a little bit. Warm up the crowd a little bit. There we go. And these guys starting to look better, starting to match a little bit better. I'm gonna copy that and put it on my crowd too. I should do this as like a final step, which I will do now that we've got that done. Okay, now that I'm done there, they're kind of matching a lot better. They're looking more similar colors there. I'm going to select my crowd 2 down here, duplicate, grab crowd 3, and kind of repeat this process. Hold down Option, drag that over, drop it on there, create their unique mask. Copy the filters from another clip, paste them onto this clip, get a good key, go back to my final comp, there you go, and now offset them a little bit. Then with my crowd number 3, I'm going to move them a little further back. And let's move these guys either over to the left a little bit, like so, and we got that foot kind of stand in front of the other one, so I'm going to move that back even further, and then move them over to the left a little bit. And there we go. Now we're starting to get more and more people, and the further back you place them, the smaller they're going to get. Because you're putting them further away in camera space. So I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to keep duplicating these over and over again. I'm going to keep each time I'm going to move them back a little bit further and a little bit further until we get them out into the street. And I'm even going to put some behind the tree and show you what we got to do with the tree there. Okay, now that I've kind of done some duplication where I've got all 8 crowds in here, I'm going to start duplicating those guys. I'm going to select this group here, and I got to take the 3D camera tracker with it, and I'm going to right click and pre-compose and move them all into their own comp here. I'm going to call that Wave 1. So I put all those guys into this Wave 1 comp. So I'm going to kill all these windows here to kind of keep everything cleaned up. Now that it's in Wave 1, I'm going to double click on this. I'm going to select everything, copy it, go back to my final comp and paste it so we have duplicates of everybody. Now I'm going to individually choose each one of these, and I'm going to start repositioning them. I'm going to take this one way back and start putting these people on the street. Select the next crowd. Put these people way back on the street. I'm going to keep doing that till I get the street lined up here with people. Then we'll come back and take a look at this. Okay, so I'm back and I've done 3 waves here. And a little problem that I've got here is I put these, I have the waves in front, the wave 2 and 3 on top of wave 1. So I'm just going to rearrange those, put wave 2 behind, wave 3 behind, and now if we play this back here, we're starting to get a lot of people. Got people out on the street. We could put people further back as much as we want to. We got this tree right here that needs to be, we need to do a rotoscope on this tree right there. And the last thing that we'll do is our shadows underneath the feet, because it kind of looks a little unnatural here because there's not really any shadows underneath the feet. But yeah, you can keep doing this and just duplicating your waves and doing as many people as you want. In fact, I might do one more and put them in the foreground. Then we're going to show you how to rotoscope the tree here. So now we've got a bunch of people up in front here. We've got the crowd in the background. And just looking at some of this to fix some of this, it looks like we've got kind of some perspective issues here. So I'm going to just go under that specific layer, and you can rotate these things to kind of change perspective and get them so they actually look like they're looking at the camera instead of going a little bit sideways and wonky. And there we go. And actually it doesn't look like we even have to rotoscope the tree after all, because we got these people in front of the tree now. So I'm going to grab that crowd, grab the 3D camera tracker as well, pre-compose, wave 4, and there we go. Okay, now we could start doing some other little fixes as well, because we want to see a little bit more people in the background. It looks like they kind of fall off really quick here, so you could actually grab wave 1, go to position, and we're going to scoot them up a little bit, just to get them into the image a little bit more, and we're also going to scale them up a little bit more as well, make them a little bit bigger. There we go. Go to wave 2, do the same thing, position, move them up so they can be seen a little bit more, scale, a little bit bigger. It's starting to look pretty good. All right. Okay, now to create the shadows. To create the shadows here in the foreground, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my wave 4 here. I'm going to kind of take these out. I'm going to bring them back because I want to see what they look like against my final comp here, and I'm going to paste them back here. I can just get rid of my wave 4 there. Just pretend I didn't do that. Here's my last wave. I'm going to put these back in a pre-comp when I'm done. But let's grab crowd 1 here, and I'm going to duplicate crowd 1, and we're going to create a shadow for crowd 1. I'm going to do the one that's on the bottom, so that's kind of behind. And on my crowd one duplicate here, I'm going to go to the lumetri color that I already had put on it, and we're going to go under curves, and I'm going to bring this down so it just kind of blackens it out. I'll put that on top so I can see here. Now black that out there. Make it dark, like that. Just bring my highlights all the way down so it's completely dark. There, it's a black shadow. Now I can put it behind here, and now we're going to lay this down. We're going to use our transform options here, and we're going to do our X rotation to lay this person down flat backwards, depending on what shadow angle you want it at. And we also have to fix that Y perspective there so it looks like it's laying flat on the ground. And fix that angle until it kind of creates some shadows underneath the feet there. There we go. Now we can change our opacity on that. We can hit T for opacity and bring down the opacity. And I'm also going to blur it a little bit so it doesn't look like such a hard shadow. Gaussian blur. Drop that on there. Shadows under there. I'm going to blur that even more. Get the opacity down about 45. That's starting to look like a good little shadow there. Going to rename that shadow for group 1. I got crowd 1 regular, crowd 1 shadow. I'm going to keep doing that for all these people on the front row, and then we'll come back and look at the final result. Okay, so we are getting there now. We're getting closer. If we did want to do the rotoscoping on the tree, because as I get up high, I notice that the smaller people behind the tree look like they're in front of the tree. So if we want to get a little nitpicky there and fix that, let's grab our front wave here. I'm going to stick those guys in, call this foreground wave. Right here. So actually I'm going to turn off all the waves for a second here, and I'm going to select the final phone mat here, and I'm going to duplicate this final phone mat. I'm going to put this on top of everything for right now, and I'm going to call this tree. Now I'm going to create a solid. I'm going to go up and hit layer, new, and do a new solid, and you can make it whatever color you want to. The dark gray one right now, I'll just do it red so we can kind of see what we're doing here. Okay, and we've got a full solid here. I'm going to turn the opacity down, hit T, and turn down my opacity. And I'm going to make this the shape of the tree. I'm going to kind of go right here in the middle, in the middle of the clip. I'm going to make this the shape of the tree here as far as I need it. And I only need to get it up about like this high here. So let's do this. I'm going to move in. And since it's just covering the people on the street, I'm just going to go here. I'm going to start right before the street and do the shape of the tree and cut out the shape of the tree here as high as I need it. I don't think I need it any higher than this. When you're done with the mask, it's going to create, we're going to create what's called a travel mat here out of the solid here. Now this is the shape of the tree. And go to my mask feather, and feather that maybe about like by 3 pixels just to soften the edge of the mask so it's not so harsh. Now I'm going to go to my tree below it, and I'm going to track the movement of the tree here. I'm going to go to the beginning and track the movement of the tree here. So we're going to go to motion tracking layout here. I'm going to select the tree layer, and I'm going to do track motion. I'm going to option zoom up or alt zoom up to this here, make it a little bit larger, move it over to the tree. We do it right here in this little corner there so it will have something to track to. Now I'm going to track backwards. I'm going to let that track backwards, then I'm going to kind of get it at the same point and let it track forward. Come back and show you that here in a second. Okay, now that that's done tracking backwards, I'm going to get to my final point that it tracked there, right there. I'm going to remember this time code that it's on. I'm going to copy that because that's where my mat starts at. I'm going to copy that, hit OK. And we're going to track forward now, get the rest of the tracking done. I could have had this at the beginning and tracked all the way through, but I was already in the middle point there. And now I'm done, so I'm going to go up to Layer, New, and I'm going to do a null object to put the to attach this data to. Edit Target. Go down and choose the null, hit OK, and apply. Don't forget to hit apply, hit OK, and now I've got that tracked to the null. I'm going to move to where that thing's in position, right about there. Where it's lined up, I need to fix my mask a little bit, obviously. But I'm going to take the red solid. Now that I've got that lined up, I'm going to take my red solid and parent it to the null. And now that mask will move with the tree. And I might have to do some fine-tune adjustments if the perspective of the tree changes, what we can do. And it doesn't look like it does actually all that much, but I'm going to go to my red solid just in case, hit my mat and turn on the animation for my mask path, go to the beginning, and look at the shape of the tree here. And it has changed perspective a little bit, so I'm just going to grab this and fix it, and it will animate that from that to the middle point, and I'll do it again at the end. And I only have to really keep it fairly accurate where it's going to be covering the people at. So right here, I need to bring it down a little bit more, at least to the street level. I think people are going to be covering it, so it won't really matter, but let's see what happens. Move to the middle point, and maintain shape, go to the end, zoom up, and now adjust the final mask to kind of animate to fit the tree. I'm kind of doing a quick job here, but you can take time on this a little bit more and make it look good. And I'm going to call it good enough for now. I'm going to feather my mask a little bit, maybe by about 5 pixels, feather the edge so it's nice and soft. And now I can hit my opacity, turn that back up to 100, because I was just using that. I turned it down just so I could match it to the tree. I put this middle on top because I'm going to use this red on top of the tree. This has to be on top of the tree here, because now I'm going to go to toggle switches and modes, and I'm going to tell this to track matte, the alpha matte, to that red solid up above it. And now I'll put that piece of tree in there. So now what we've got is that chunk of tree there. And I can see that my mask isn't all that great there. Maybe needs to shrink in a little bit. So I'm going to select my red layer, go to feather, go to my mask here, and bring down the expansion by, let's say, -3 pixels, just to eat that mask in a little bit into the tree. So there we go. We've got that layer of the mask going over the tree and connecting to the tree and putting that tree now hopefully in front of everybody else. I'm going to turn all my layers back on, move this forward, and now the tree is in front of these people here, so all I have to do is grab my foreground wave and put that on top. Now when it moves up, actually let's turn this off just to show you what it was doing. Now that tree is in front of the people, and you see I needed to get that mask up a little bit higher, so we're going to fix that right now. Let's go to the beginning frame. Look at the beginning frame, it's covering. Let's go to my middle frame. My middle frame it is no longer covering, so I'm going to bring that up a little bit more and animate that portion of my mask go up a little bit more. And now let's go to the end frame and look at that. And once again, it needs to be up higher above the people there. And there we go. So now if we don't have that foreground group and we play this, that tree is now in front of the crowd. It's out on the street. And I did elevate these guys a little bit off the street to make them taller, so but that's going to be covered by the foreground group. So click, and there we go. There could be some other things I could do to kind of fix this up a little bit, but that's kind of the gist of it there, to replicate a crowd and make it look like there's a ton of people in there. So I've got these 2 final clips here. I'm showing kind of 2 different examples of it with 2 different versions here. So there we go, kind of a rough finish of that. And there's a couple little issues you can see, like first of all, don't get costumes that are green, because that key is really tough to pull on that guy there. But anyway, that's kind of a basic idea of how that's all done. If you have any questions, please post them, and thanks for watching.